Hi, everyone. Good day wherever you are listening from. Today, on this special episode of Parmjit Speaks, I have a very special guest. Lee Lampert is on the call with us today. And I am so grateful, honored, and humbled that he agreed to be on this podcast and share his insights with our viewers. I just want to give a brief introduction to Lee, although he really needs no introduction. So Lee, for those of you who know, he is one of the founders of the PMP credential. So the PMP credential being, for listeners who are not familiar with project management, the project management professional credential and certification. Lee also is a past president of PMI Ohio chapter and has traveled extensively all over the world, speaking at different chapters and different organizations, sharing his insights, his wisdom, and his vast experience. Lee, I don't want to drone on and on because I think, again, most listeners are familiar with you, but why don't you go ahead and tell folks a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I'm 78 years old, so there's a lot to tell. But I'll give you some background on why we're together today. For transparency purposes, I must admit that we met on a cruise recently
We
and
did.
spent a lot of time talking about these topics. And I kind of decided that we were sort of kindred spirits in the way we think about some of these things. So when you asked me to join you, I was very excited. I think the topic today is going to be very important, but so that you understand my background, I didn't start out my life as a project manager. I moved into it. What I like to call morphed into it over the years by finding what turned me on in terms of the work environment, why I felt good about what I did, and how I could pass that along to other people working in my organization, and then later on, as you've said, around the world, talking about these topics and inspiring, using their terms, inspiring them to perform better, faster, more enjoyable. And so it's become sort of my tagline in that productivity and resilience go hand in hand because everything doesn't always go the way we'd like it to. That doesn't mean
Shocking.
you lay down and die. You come at it from a different angle. So I've practiced that over the years, going from job to job, organization to organization, finding ways to inspire myself and other people over the years. So that's the topic I want to talk about. It's near and dear to my heart, and I often say if I could go back and have an organization with
Mhm.
a lot of people working for me, I would, because of the thrill that I get from seeing that happen. But the way I've been impacting so many more people than one organization, that I prefer to stay with that approach.
Absolutely. And Lee, so you touched on a few things that I kind of want to go back to. So yes, so today's topic for folks who are listening in is personal productivity and longevity in your career, which I think today's topic is crucial, especially in such a volatile career job market, right? I think across industries, whether it's healthcare, it's casinos or finance, whatever the industry is, there seems to be a lot of layoffs. So I think that this conversation comes at a crucial point in our economy today. Um, and so you also mentioned resiliency. And so I just, before we get into the topic, of personal productivity and before you share your insights, Lee, um, I do want to talk a little bit about resilience. And so for the audience members who don't know, I know you recently went through a health event. And you had to have part of your leg amputated. So firstly, thank you for joining us despite your health challenges. But uh, as you mentioned, and I think as you and I have spoken about before, you are incredibly resilient. And also, I agree with the other chapter members who've heard you speak, or other folks who've heard you speak. You are absolutely inspiring. And Lee, you're right. We met on a PMI cruise in which you were speaking. And I remember I was just in awe of you. I truly was. And when we sat down and had a conversation, I thought, my gosh, I see why everyone wants him to speak. So can you, if it's not too personal and you're okay sharing, would you share with the audience a little bit about what you've just gone through and how you just maintained resiliency? Because I think right after all this happened, you were still very active on social media. I was laughing. I was like, of course, Lee is still posting.
Yeah, I'll be happy to share that. It ties in actually to what we're saying today.
Yeah.
I was on the back end of a 6 country trip, speaking to chapters around the world, and I ended up in Portugal, my last stop. And I had been having some problems with my feet, and they got infected. Well, rather than cancel the trip, I just kept going, and the infection kept going. And by the time I got to Portugal, it became an emergency. So I stayed long enough to give my speech in Portugal, and
Mhm.
then they rushed me home to Ohio, where about 4 hours after I arrived, they were taking my leg off in order to save my life, which I thought was a decent trade.
I'd say so.
And and so a lot of people have talked to me about how did you bounce back from that? How depressing could it be to travel the world all the time, talking to thousands of people, and now not be able to do that? And I said,
Yeah.
well, that not be able to do that's temporary.
Yeah.
And so I immediately started to work on recovery, expedited the recovery schedule. The doctors were not happy with me about that, but I gave them a target date of mid-January to be back on the road with my prosthesis so that I could get the job done. And it's gone pretty smoothly. I occasionally want to take a step with my right leg, but since there isn't one, it makes it a little inconvenient. But I'm starting to adjust quite well. I'm interested in how it's going to be without the feeling in my leg to walk on it. But I got to tell you, it's the weirdest thing. I still have a feeling in my toes. I can wiggle my toes, but there's no toes there.
Yeah.
But I can see my leg moving as if they were wiggling toes. My grandkids love that, and so the nerves are there, but they're not going to be there in the prosthesis, obviously. So I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to it. My first adventure other than this webinars, I got another one on the 9th to do for Maryland, and then I start hitting the road, New York, Dubai, and on and on. So I'm anxious to get back out there. I like to think people miss me, but whether they do or not doesn't matter. I'm still coming. Uh, and, and I still have a lot of opinions. I should have a disclaimer up front that my opinions are not necessarily the opinions of PMI. I want to make sure that they don't falsely believe that I'm representing PMI per se, because I'm not. I have strong opinions that
Yeah.
fortunately mostly consistent with PMI, but I may vary occasionally, and I'll share that with you as well.
No, and I love that about you, Lee. That's also one of the first things I noticed when you and I first met. You are very transparent. I would use the word authentic. You're very authentic, and I think that's why folks love learning from you and love connecting with you. And I think they do miss you. I think all of us miss you, and I know my chapter is very fortunate. You're going to be visiting us in November here in Las Vegas, so.
Anxious,
Uh,
yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so thank you for that update, Lee. And I'm so happy to hear that you continue to do well. I'm not surprised. And actually, if you remember, I was at the PMI Summit in Atlanta, and I remember I was talking to John Signo of Brandon Land. And John said something along the lines of, have you gone and spoken to Lee? And I said, Lee? I said, Lee's not here. I said, Lee's, and I said, remember he had the health event. And he said, oh no, he's joined via Zoom. And I forget the wonderful lady's name. She was carrying around an iPad, and there you were. And I smiled because I said, of course Lee is here. I said, nothing can stop him.
Yeah, I missed that event. That's one of the passions I have is meeting all those people from around the world.
Sure, absolutely. And I'm sure you were missed, and I hope we're able to see you at the next one. So So getting into again, Lee, talking about, the job market, and I know it's impacted a lot of individuals. I personally know a lot of individuals that have been impacted. Uh, I kind of want to get your take on, so how can individuals, how can they maintain productivity and maintain focus amidst this volatility and this uncertainty, not knowing if they have a job tomorrow?
Yeah, the thing is that there's so many variables that oftentimes people are in the wrong job.
Yeah.
And that makes them very vulnerable to job change. So I always talk about it. If you're gonna be in the working world, first of all, the days of 50 years of work and gold watch at the end is over.
Mm-hmm.
People change jobs on purpose 2 to 3 times in their career, and sometimes not on purpose as well. So we have to prepare for that. We have to understand that being in the same job with the same organization is not necessarily an objective that you want to have. So what I tell people is, first of all, you have to be prepared. You have to decide what you want to be when you grow up and prepare that way. I mean, if you're a project manager, obviously a PMP is a good start to that preparation. Secondly, you have to have the right attitude. In the work environment, you have to understand you really can't take it personally because organizations are in it for profitability, and
Yeah,
decisions they make are oftentimes not based on you as a person, they're based on the impact on the organization. So the attitude, and then the third piece that's always really carried me is enthusiasm. I think we have to understand that a job is not our life. A job can be a segue to enjoying our life, but the enthusiasm that I bring, for example, is enthusiasm about the changes that I may precipitate in you by telling you things that will make you be a better employee, for example. And so
absolutely.
I think those are important things to understand. That I've been I was fired. We turned it into a laid off because it would have been embarrassing. But I was fired once, and I originally took it very, very personally. I was depressed, to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
honest with you. And I realized that that doesn't get anything done. That doesn't change anything. So I set about changing what I was doing and how I was doing it, and have never looked back.
Absolutely. And so many great points that you brought up, Lee. Uh, so going back to, you said it's not personal, right? And I think that's so important. Thank you for mentioning that. I think it is so easy to take it personal, right? Because you feel it's a form of rejection, right? So, and nobody likes to get rejected, whether, right, that's in business or whether that's a relationship. Rejection doesn't feel good. And so it's hard not to take it personally, but I'm glad you mentioned that, because a lot of times I think, uh, for lack of a better term, companies have no other choice. At the very top, executives are making decisions, and there's a myriad of factors that I'm sure go into these decisions. And as you said, a lot of times it's not personal. It has sometimes nothing to do with an employee's performance. And so I agree. I think it's important to just maintain, as hard as it is, you know, uh, feel your emotions, be depressed. I mean, I recently went through something similar, and I too, I was depressed because here I thought, this is the company I'm going to spend the rest of, this is it. I'm going to retire with this company. And so it kind of came out of left field, but it's important to, yes, if you're depressed, feel angry, feel all the emotions you need to feel, but get back up and continue to trudge forward. So great points that you brought up. And so now so let's say an individual has been laid off and they now need to seek a new opportunity. how can individuals now leverage their skills and their experiences to explore some of these new opportunities and maybe even look at different industries? Because again, and I don't mean to continue to use myself as an example, but I worked in healthcare for a majority of my career, and I know it can be scary to jump ship from an industry that you've been familiar with, in which you know all the acronyms and terminology, and then jump to a different industry. So how can individuals leverage their skills and expertise to do that?
Well, I think one of the areas that people have to understand is that you don't take the first job you find. You take the job that there's a fit and that you have the right skills for, and increase your possibilities of being retained for a longer period of time. Unfortunately, a lot of people who quote lose a job take the first opportunity that comes along and they end up not being happy there and moving on again. So
Yeah.
it's important to take your time. It's one of the things I like about what this Brandon Land program does with Signo is that he tells you that he'll show you how to land these opportunities, but in doing that, he makes sure that you understand it's the right opportunity for you. He doesn't tell you just take any opportunity. And I think I really want to emphasize that. A lot of people are permanently unemployed because they take the wrong choices. They don't take the time to find the right fit. And once you find the fit, then the attitude and the enthusiasm becomes a factor. But if you don't have the right skills, there's a high probability you're not going to be a good fit for that job.
Yeah, and I'm glad, and again, I'm glad you mentioned that as well. So John and I also had a similar conversation in which John and we had a very candid conversation after, my last employment experience, and John said, Pam, he said, make sure you're not, and I did have a lot of offers, and John said, Pam, he said, you need to ensure that these are the right opportunities for you. He said, right now, you might feel a sense of desperation and you might want to grab at everything that comes your way. And he said, make sure you don't do that. uh so I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think that's really important, because it's scary, and being unemployed is scary. Not knowing where your next meal is going to come from is scary. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And so speaking about Brandon Land, and for the folks listening, so John Signo is of Brandon Land. He is, I think he's coined the term find your next six-figure opportunity, and John, if John, you're listening, I apologize if I've kind of jumbled those words, but and he's going to be presenting in November alongside Lee at PMI Southern Nevada chapter. But how can individuals establish a strong personal brand and then cultivate their professional network to enhance their career prospects? And I know you're probably going to talk a little bit about LinkedIn also, because I know LinkedIn is, for me anyway, it's such a strong tool.
Yeah, I think for me it was, and I think this is what it should be for most people, is find what it is that turns you on? What is it that you feel very good about what you do, your ability to do it? Don't let anybody take that away from you. And that's the way I morphed from being a quote project manager to fundamentally now I'm a public speaker.
Yeah,
Uh, because I feel good about that. I feel I can impact more people in more ways by being a public speaker than I could ever do as a project manager. Now, I loved project management, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't what I ultimately loved to do. And so now with with this opportunity that PMI has provided me to go around the world. Now, PMI doesn't pay my way, so don't misunderstand what a free ride I've got. Chapters will invite me and pay my expenses, but I charge no fee.
right.
I don't charge any fee for that at all. And so what I get is, I guess one of the residual benefits is I'm wearing some of them today. I get a new clothing wardrobe every country I visit. I got lots of Puget Sound hat. I got a Sri Lanka shirt, and I got dozens more of them in my closet. So that's the pay I get for giving the speech. And then watching LinkedIn, watching the comments that come in, the suggestions for improvement, and so I found that that's what I do. Now, some people could never do that. Some people say, "Well, you obviously had Toastmasters." That's not true. I haven't ever had a Toastmasters class, but it's something I do fairly well. And I think all of us should be looking for that, because that's going to give you the longevity. Because if you are good at what you do, and then you have the attitude and the enthusiasm, you're going to be around as long as you want to be around. And I think
Absolutely.
that's what people need to understand. Don't the company's not going to take their job isn't to take care of you, and so you got to take care of yourself. I think I'm very selfish that way. I think it's a team sport, so to speak. But the fact of the matter is, if you're the star, the team counts on you. And that's what people have to begin to build, that attitude, not giving up the team idea. I mean, when we talk about power skills, used to be just soft skills, now they're
Mhm.
power skills. These are the skills that get jobs done. You can have all the AI in the world, but if you don't have people that know how to capitalize on the power of it, you've got nothing. So the power skills are really the secret to success.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, right, and project management, or not just project management, I think just to be do anything in this world, you have to communicate and you have to have soft skills and you need to know how to interact with people. And I think what communication is 90% of project management is communication. So absolutely, and I think it's important to hone those skills. I know you did this, Lee, and I think I did this as well on LinkedIn. I know we each have our own personal hashtag. Um, I know my network, and after listening to John and learning how to market myself, I know my LinkedIn and my social media has grown, especially my LinkedIn. I think it's grown a lot, and I've leveraged my network, and I think you've done that as well. So the only reason I'm mentioning this is because, again, for all those who are listening to this session, I think leveraging your personal brand and helping to build upon your existing brand. And even if that means you only have 100 followers or 100 connections, just continue to build, and it will get to your personal brand will get to the point that you need for it to get to eventually. Just don't lose momentum. Just keep
Yeah, I
going.
think people need to understand it's not about business cards, and it's not
Right.
about other kind of silly promotional ideas. It's about somebody seeing your name and going, "Ah, I know what that guy is all about.
Right.
I
Yeah.
know if I need something in that person's arena, I know the person to contact." It's not I don't even have a business card. People
Yeah.
will ask me for, I said, I don't believe in them. I said, if you want to know, I gave him two options. I said, if you want to know a little bit more about me, Google my name or look at LinkedIn. That's where you're going to get the truth. Not a business card or not a brochure or a resume. And John points that out in his program, that most resumes are terrible. They don't really do anything to attract people to you as a potential employee.
No, absolutely. And nowadays, I'm right, everything's online. And so it's these algorithms that are picking up on certain keywords.
Sure.
And so that doesn't necessarily speak to you, the individual. You might be a great fit if you could actually get your foot in the door and get in front of
Exactly.
somebody, but
Yep.
that's not the reality of today. So Lee, and I know we're kind of running out of time. And so one thing I wanted to ask you, and I think you are the perfect person to answer this question. How can individuals maintain motivation and drive during these periods of market uncertainty? And the reason I say this is, again, given your health event, and given all the things that you've been through in your career, you have always bounced back. And I think you touched a little bit on this before, in which you talked about having the right mental attitude. And I think that is so important. I've had my own health events and things that I've been through in my life. And I will say, having the right positive PMA, positive mental attitude, and enthusiasm makes all the difference. So how do individuals maintain that motivation? Because I know, especially when you've lost your job or you're going through times of uncertainty, it can be really hard to do that.
It's a mental challenge that you keep yourself up. If you, what I found in the one or two times that I've experienced this is that is depression feeds upon itself.
Yeah.
And if you start out depressed, you become more depressed. And so
Yeah.
what you have to do is fundamentally reject the idea of depression, look for what will supersede that feeling that you have. I mean, when my wife died 3 years ago, after 55 years of marriage, you can imagine I was a little depressed.
Sure.
But I had to look forward to what, what's left for me. And thankfully, PMI played a big role there. They filled that vacuum and gave me some place to spend my energy rather than worrying about the fact that I didn't have my wife anymore.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to do that. Look for that alternative that will allow you to put that depression in the rearview mirror.
Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And also, Lee, again, very, very sorry to hear about your wife. That's tough. So I think absolutely. I think that's a great point. I also think, and I think you said you surrounded yourself with PMI, with PMI and other individuals. I think that's also something important to know, because I think it's easy when you get depressed. I think it's easy to what is the word? Misery loves, what is that term? Misery loves company, that old saying.
Mhm.
It's true,
Sure,
right? And so it's
sure.
easy to, go out with folks or surround yourself with folks who are also, depressed. And so, you could each share your grievances and how angry you are or how upset you are. And that's easy to do. But I think it's important to surround yourself with, and I've always believed this, surround yourself with successful people who could maybe introduce new skills that you may not have thought of, or introduce you to new industries, and new connections. So
And if you,
absolutely.
I tell you, just in the interest of the last time we have, uh, I think if you have people that work for you or with you,
Hmm.
and you notice any dramatic change in their approach, we talk about this with kids. If we got kids, they're getting straight A's, and all of a sudden they're getting D's and F's, and they're not going to school, we know something's happening. In this case, usually drugs. But the fact of the matter is, in the work world, when you see a change, a significant change in someone's performance, there's something going on there. And to the extent you can, you should try to find out how to deal with that. If you can't personally, then get a professional to help work with them, because there's something going on. People don't change dramatically unless something causes change.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And that's so important, so important to mention. Absolutely. So I think so this will leave. So firstly, this was an amazing conversation. And again, thank you so very much for agreeing to be on this podcast. Again, I'm humbled and I'm especially excited because this is the first episode of the 2024. So thank you for kicking off this new year. You set the bar high. You always do. You set the bar high. So thank you very much, Lee. I hope you continue to heal. And we here at the Southern Nevada chapter, we're excited to see you at the end of the year. But I'm excited to continue following your journey on LinkedIn and seeing all the other chapters that you visit and all the other wealth of knowledge that you continue to distribute to those that have the great fortune of hearing you speak. So thank you again.
Thank you, Pam. But it looks to me like you've got a good fit. You got the skills, you got the attitude, and you got the enthusiasm. Can't go wrong.
Absolutely. I say, I say all the time, I've been a little feisty since I was young. So there is no such thing as can't in my book. So
Absolutely. Good for
thank,
you.
thank you for saying that.
Good for you. Take care.
All right, you too. Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye.